Good afternoon, Igor, and thank you very much for taking time from your weekends to have this interview and to explain a little bit your adventure, your startup adventure in Switzerland as an expat, and to present Gamaya, the company that you are representing. You are the CEO and the co-founder of Gamaya.
Thank you, Violeta. Yeah, it's very interesting opportunity. I'm happy to explain a bit more about our journey.
So before going really in more details about Gamaya, tell me something about you. Tell me more about you, about your background.
Yeah. Okay. I'm coming initially from the software industry, having a background in applied mathematics mostly. So I spent a few years in the software world, actually even doing programming. But I quickly realized that I want to apply my analytical skills to different industries, and decided actually to shift and change the industry from software to financial banking at the time of financial crisis. It wasn't that I didn't like IT or software. It's just I did not see myself programming, right? I like technologies, I like software-driven topics, but I just didn't see myself as a developer, right? I saw myself a bit more commercial, people-oriented person, I would say. That's what led me to join one of the leading investment bank back then in Russia. So I spent 5 years in the financial investment world. Mostly starting first with financial decision making, and I did not have any experience or education in the financial world, so I had to complement. So I did a few more degrees just to close this gap on the financial side, and then I also had experience. I spent a few years providing investment recommendations for the investment committee of one of the largest nuclear energy corporation in Russia. So I actually analyzed over a few years, hundreds of different investment projects or companies. It was very interesting experience for me. In parallel with this experience, I always was trying at least to have some entrepreneurial footprint, right? So I had we had a very small IT company with my friends. All my friends are coming from IT industry. Even though I'm not programming, but I still very much attached to IT industry. And we had this small experience with my friends, which wasn't big, but which was a good start for us. And then back in Moscow, I had my own company or startup in the e-commerce space. We were customizing and selling the devices for smart home market, all kind of equipment from to manage doors, to manage the light, etc. Nowadays, it's you have Google Nest, right, etc. It's big topic. And back then in 2011, it actually was booming as well in Russia. So it was good. Then once I started to do due diligence of different companies, I realized that I actually don't necessarily have holistic experience of general business management, right? And I wanted to close this gap. So I did the MBA here in Switzerland. I relocated to Switzerland, did the MBA here. And after, let's say, 8 to 9 years of corporate experience in banks, software companies, etc., I decided that it's time to join the entrepreneurial route. And we had a professor in the university who was teaching all kind of courses for entrepreneurship. So I attended all of them. So I like the guy, and he was he's one of the prominent business angels here in Switzerland. So I asked him if he knows any company startup in Switzerland that is looking for commercially minded professionals. And then a few months later, he got back to me, introduced me to one of the co-founder of Gamaya. this is how it's kind of started. Yeah. But I had like in overall, I basically changed 3 or 4 industries over the last 15 years. And I changed the number of roles, right? From initially being software developer, then to, let's say, financial decision support, then to the investment manager, now to all kind of, executive roles. So I had like, I enjoy variety of functions and a variety of tasks. That's probably what led me into startup world as well, because you inevitably have to do many things and combine different roles.
Yeah, it's really brilliant, all the all the roads that you crossed to come at this age. And it's interesting because when you were saying, yes, 8 years experience in corporate and in banking, then you do started with your own startup in Russia, then you are in Switzerland since few years. It's really, when someone is listening you, it's expecting to see someone like 60 years old in front of it, but you are really someone very young. At what age in general in Russia, because I'm very interested also on this cultural aspects, how early in East Europe we do start with more, working experience.
Yeah, definitely it has a connection with life expectancy, right, in Russia, because it's still not what you would expect in Europe, right? This has impact on when do we start having families, when do we start actually having first professional experience, etc. So typically in Russia, you start 20, 21, 22, you already have to have first job. Basically, when you're in mid-30s, right, you have already a substantial professional experience, typically.
How other investors are looking to when you propose them like a new business, a new startup, and you are young? How you bring this credibility in more West Europe, where it's not, the culture is not the same like in East. Yeah, we do start to work earlier. By the age of 23, we do have already a good experience. While in West countries, 23, you are barely finishing your master degrees and probably, luckily, with one internship, and that's it. So how you really overcome the challenges that maybe you had being in Switzerland?
First of all, obviously, when we created Gamaya, we were already like, I was, 27, 28, so already a bit more experience, than others. And but definitely, it can be a challenge. But let's say it's not a big bottleneck to convince people to create your own business if you have. If you're not alone, right? Because you have to diversify risk and diversify experience. We had, we've been 3 people, 3 co-founders. All are coming from different, with different background, from different industries, potentially even different age, right, etc. So this definitely helps to overcome some of the challenges. But if you are 23 years old and alone, without co-founders, etc., without real commercial experience, then definitely this could be a big challenge, just to kind of get the credibility and trust, right, of the investors.
Okay, thank you.
But in US, I would say in US, it's becoming quite a norm for young people to do the MBA immediately after MBA to do a startup. It's not a problem, actually. It's also, I think it's right now we live in the time when to kickstart startup, you don't need a lot of resources, right? You need the internet, you need a laptop, and it's pretty much it. Okay, you need to know sometimes, software development, etc., right? So it doesn't require a lot of professional experience to actually kickstart the startup with your idea.
But also what is key, because you've mentioned it, what was one of your drivers? It was the person that you met, that, like the teacher, and who really inspired you. So we will say that also the network, it's very important, especially when we are in a foreign country and really need to start from zero.
Yeah, for me, the best integration in Switzerland was to do MBA, for sure, because I met a lot of people. I must say that I'm not like the big fan of MBAs, because typically MBA programs, they create wrong expectations. But I must say, definitely you are exposed to different people, different industries, different companies, and this is very beneficial for me. It worked extremely well to actually become very well integrated to new country.
And besides the the connections that you started to have, also being involved with business angels in Switzerland, did you saw any support from the public authorities in the creation of the startups? Any program specifically created for the young people desiring to open a startup?
Yeah, I think in this respect, we were quite lucky, because the core technology that we utilize, we spin out from one of the universities, right, in Switzerland, called the PFL, and most of startup ecosystem today in Switzerland developed around the two universities, UPFL and ETH, right, in Zurich. And if you have technology or idea coming from research environment, first of all, it adds credibility, and second, you have all ecosystem that is there to support you, to train you if you don't have any like prior business experience, etc. So I think in this respect, when innovation comes from like universities, it's actually a very good start here in Switzerland. And then like I mean, we didn't face any big problems to open the company. It was like very easy, no bureaucracy at all. And then later on, we were very much supported, because at some point we actually applying for technology grants, etc. And overall, I think when it comes overall, Switzerland is very good to kickstart the technology-driven business.
Okay. How we reach, because I've interviewed also other startups in other countries, and one of the topic came on the table, it was the bureaucracy. How difficult is bureaucracy in some countries? How did you find it in Switzerland?
I mean, frankly, because I'm coming from the potentially most bureaucratic country in the world, right, Russia. So for me, it's like it's very different. Obviously, I had experience beyond Russia, professional experience in the past, right? But definitely Switzerland, in my opinion, is like, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there is no bureaucracy. Everything works very smooth. You know what to expect. You know what kind of like requirements and conditions needed to do certain things. I mean, overall, it's very positive. I mean, like me, obviously coming from Russia, I'm a bit biased in this sense. But I mean, after 6 years of having company in Switzerland, I cannot recall any moment where we faced a lot of bureaucratic procedure or process. Yeah. No, I think overall it was very smooth. Yeah.
Among the co-founders of Gamaya, is it someone from Switzerland, or all of you are coming from other countries?
I mean, we are lucky, but yes, all of us are coming from different countries. Yeah. We ended up in Switzerland for a number of reasons, because the two other co-founders, they coming from technology world, right, or academia world. So they've been working on the development of this technology in the university, in the PFL, for a number of years. They had international projects financed by let's say billionaires and entrepreneurs, because typically also how Swiss universities work and how do they get funding, right, for all kind of different research activities. They open because typically universities are very well supported by the government, obviously, but also by Swiss people. And so we've been lucky, because one billionaire, actually owner of Ferring Pharma, Frederick Paulson. He was actually providing financing to EPFL to finance, among everything else, the research activities that led in the end to the creation of the company.
So I do see that one of the big support in Switzerland, especially in your case, it was really coming from the university environment where they are very supportive on a startup, and I believe that also they are supporting the startuppers with some bureaucratic papers. You know, to not underestimate that maybe one of the complexity in Switzerland, it's depending where you are based. Officially are three languages, you know, in Switzerland, German, French, Italian. So that's why I was asking also if someone from the co-founders, it is Swiss, or at least if maybe all of you or at least one of you speaks also one of the local languages, especially where Gamaya it's registered.
Yeah, I think we were from the day one very international. I mean, Switzerland was for us a very good place to kickstart the business, and from the day one, because you know, in the most cases, Swiss local market is quite small, right? You are forced to actually go beyond Switzerland from the day one. It's actually on one point, okay, you cannot start with your home market. This is a bit, you know, on the downside, but on the other hand, you are forced to think about international expansion from the day one, right? It changes your perspective when you start the business, yeah. Okay. So I don't think that if you are expat in Switzerland, it's actually a disadvantage in when it comes to, you know, creating the business.
I think why I asked this because I had an interview with other two younger startups, and both also being expats, and the challenges that both of them they told me is that we don't speak German, so they wanted to register their startup in Basel, and I said we don't speak German and we do have a lot of pushback because of the bureaucracy. So that's why for me it was, you know, good to understand also your view. How it was for you, but probably in your case, as it was also the university in the middle who probably supported you with more the bureaucratic papers, probably you did not have the same, let's say, linguistic language.
I think what helped, since I was already connected with the, you know, startup ecosystem in Switzerland, business angels, professors, etc. Whenever I had question, right, I don't know, how do I find accounting company, right, etc. How do I find legal company? Can you give me a recommendation? They were very much supportive, so I did not basically invent anything myself, right? So I tapped into the ecosystem, startup ecosystem, which is quite developed now in Switzerland. So the best way also to get in contact with, you know, current entrepreneurs, right, or ex-entrepreneurs, they are definitely, you know, like very helpful.
Okay, so I think that if we want to give an advice to other startups, other people that they want really to try to have their startup in Switzerland or no matter where, the first recommendation it will be network. Increase your network.
Absolutely. I mean, network. You know, there are a number of meetups, events, etc. There are different organizations that are promoting and supporting, you know, ecosystem, startup ecosystem in Switzerland. I don't know, Swiss Startup Association, etc. So it's not difficult to be part of it.
Okay, to close the loop in the startup in Switzerland, what will be your 3 recommendation that you will have it for another startup?
3. I mean, I have probably more.
Your top 3.
One. First, if you have a co-founding team, right, and you enter and you want to develop a business in the domain where none of the co-founders had real experience. In our case, this was actually the case because we were trying to develop solutions for agriculture without prior experience in agriculture. So definitely, if you want to fast track and accelerate the learning curve, it's better to have someone who is coming from the industry, right, that you are trying to address. This is definitely one. Second, you know, we are early days. We've been very much technology-centric organization because we spin out technology from the university, and we were trying to develop solutions leveraging this technology. So let's say we had R&D spirit during first years, and then when you try to commercialize the solutions, sometimes you have to change the culture, because to make transition from R&D organization to a real commercial organization, it can be very difficult. I was the only first person out of potentially first 10 employees in the company who was coming with a commercial background, right? With the so for me, definitely the advice would be to bring much more commercial people from the get-go, right? Not just surround yourself with, you know, bright scientists and researchers. Obviously you need them, right, if you want to develop something breakthrough, but don't underestimate the importance of all kind of commercial activities, marketing, communications, etc., business development, because in the end, you know, there is still kind of a big difference between how European startups typically work and how American startups work, because European startups, they try to develop a very you know, fine-tune, develop a very ready product, and then go to market, and then find out that actually market needs something else. And in US, they develop a prototype, right, and then they go and they try to obviously get customer feedback and understand what customer needs, etc. So they do it very early. They do it in the beginning, right, and not in the middle. This allows you to actually, you know, like adjust your strategy, your technology, your product, and reflect it, you know, in the company reality. So I would say this is second, and third would be I would say it's a good question. I would say you the journey in startup will be like American roller coaster, right, with ups and downs. So you have to find people who are ready, right, who will be resilient in this kind of environment, because it's a very different environment versus, you know, like work in an established corporation. And sometimes you know, you can have great individuals with a very good experience, but in terms of, you know, personality and mindset, they can be not very well suited, you know, to this environment. It's challenging environment. You have new technology, you have new market, you have, I mean, new customers, etc. You have like all kind of different dimensions of innovation that you have to push forward, and therefore you have to have people who feel comfortable in this kind of environment. Yeah.
So it's also, we can say, be ready to take risks. We do see.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's all about risk, because myself, obviously, you have to take risk, and it's not just, you don't join startup for financial rewards from the day one, right? This is not the key driver. You join startup because you have passion, because you want to create something new, or because you want to make the world a better place, right?
Okay, thank you so much for these three advices, let's say, for future startups. Let's talk about Gamaya. And you've mentioned one of your learnings, let's say, from the tips one that you were providing, is that it's good to have among the co-founders someone coming from that industry. Now, why agriculture? Because from all your experience in the past, you never touched on agriculture area. Yeah. None of you, of the three of you, didn't touch it. Why then it was in agriculture?
I mean, we had technology in our hands that could be applied to different industries, not just agriculture, environmental monitoring, mining, etc., right? Medical imaging. It's just because the core research that led to the creation of the company was mostly applied to study for the environmental monitoring, to study actually vegetation around the lakes. And so we had this use case in mind, and we thought, where would we see the biggest impact, right, of this kind of technology? And we thought agriculture is one of the largest industries that was not digitalized during last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So it's potentially the biggest and the largest industry that wasn't touched by digital revolution. And still, we have a pressure of growing population, efficiency of crop production, its sustainability, etc. It's obviously, it creates a lot of challenges right now, because we need to feed our growing population in a much more sustainable way, sustainable and efficient. All of these reasons, I think, led us to end up in agriculture.
Okay, so let's try to imagine how it was a kind of brainstorming among the three of you. It was saying, okay, look guys, let's see in which industry we have less digitalization. Let's see which is the industry the most powerful, or where it needs more to be developed around this one.
Yeah.
So let's say that
and where we can provide the biggest impact as well, right? In terms of economical impact, environmental impact, or whatever, social impact.
Okay. And then you decided,
then we had to kind of explore different countries, because we had no idea where to start. We obviously, knew largest agricultural countries, but it took us quite some time actually to visit, to meet some growers and agricultural players. I think what helped us really, one of the early investors that we met almost 6 months after incorporation was coming from agricultural industry in Brazil. And he just invited us to visit his farm in Brazil, just to see and be exposed, right, to a proper industrial agriculture. So this has definitely helped to develop a much better understanding how agriculture works, and also in the end led to the decision that we decided to start from Brazil, because we were selecting between Brazil and Ukraine as two of the largest agricultural economies, because agriculture for these countries, it's very instrumental. I think in Brazil and in Ukraine, agriculture contributes, I don't know, to 20-30% of the economy, of GDP, right? So it's like instrumental for them. It's the most dynamic export-driven industries in these countries. So this is kind of what we wanted. We wanted to be in the country where agriculture is fundamental, right? Because if you take, I don't know, even if you take US, which is the largest food producer in the world, right? Agriculture today, I don't know, represents 4 or 5% of GDP. It's still critical, right? But it's not like so fundamental for the economy, versus Brazil and Ukraine, where agriculture contributes to third of the economy.
Okay, so what I can see from here, one of your strengths, it was that quite early enough, only 6 months after you created Gamaya, right away you were exposed to the farmers, right away you saw the reality and the needs that
and we were exposed to the farmers mostly because one of our investors, right, were coming from agriculture. This definitely helped, because you want, obviously, you have this notion of acquiring or getting smart money, right? Because success never relies just on the funding, right? So typically you want to surround yourself with investors that can bring you something else on top of the funds, right? Expertise, network, etc. So in our case, one of the first major investors definitely helped us in this respect.
So if I will add on the list of tips and tricks and advices that we can give to startups, it's really looking for investors not only for the money, but also for the experience and exposure.
Ideally, you want to have a combination, right? It's nothing wrong to have just, you know, financially driven investors. It's perfectly fine. But if you surround yourself just with financially driven expectations, the financially driven investors, then it creates certain expectations to have this kind of expertise or industry expertise inside the team.
Okay. And because you mentioned it about investors, after how much time after the creation you started your first crowdfunding, and how you raised funds?
In our case, because we were gradually spinning the technology from the university, and let's say we spent first 6 months while still being almost in the research lab, right? We didn't have company, but we knew that we want to create the company. So we leveraged this opportunity while being part of this research system. We already started, you know, talking with business angels and early stage investors, right? So when we, in the end, 6 months after, decided to incorporate the company, we already had a first, you know, network of business angels who would be willing to support us, right? So let's say 2nd month after the incorporation, we got first convertibles. I think it was $60,000 francs coming from 3 business angels, which was very helpful. But this kind of relationship we developed not immediately after incorporating the company, but actually before business creation.
Okay, and this, let's say, first round, it's dated since 3, 4, 5 years when it happened. This
it happened actually more than 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't, I mean, we did not do, you know, we didn't do like first round. We created the company, and then we started our fundraising efforts, and we didn't do like Series A round. We were just collecting convertible loans. I don't know if you're familiar, but this is the most flexible way to kickstart and avoid unnecessary legal complexity for the fundraising, right, for early stage company. So with the first year, I think we've been fundraising only using convertible loans. And then once we became much more mature, we decided to go for a full, you know, equity round.
Okay. So tell me then more about Gamaya today. 6 years after, you know, all this adventure started, what are, you know, the technology you are proposing today for the growers, the services? So tell me more about.
We developed Gamaya on the premise of new technology. We wanted to develop digital agronomy solutions, leveraging imagery that is coming from drones or satellites. So this was and what we wanted to do is we wanted to capture local knowledge, local agronomy knowledge, and actually scale it using the technology, using the remote sensing technology. We never intended to replace, you know, agronomists or the knowledge that is already there. We wanted to enable, right, decision making, much more efficient decision making. It's like, to bring you an analogy, you still need a doctor, right, who prescribes the medication, but he is equipped with all kind of, you know, like information coming from MRI or other systems, and that's why he's ready. He's like equipped to make suitable decisions and medication, right? In our case, we are not replacing agronomists or farmers. We are equipping them with digital agronomy tools that allows them to take quality decisions, right? Because typically farmers and growers, they take, I don't know, 40 decisions during the growing season. And how traditional agronomy and farming works today, in order to identify different kind of issues, presence of weeds, diseases, etc., you need to actually scout the field, right? You need to scout the field. Sometimes you sample, sometimes you send it to the lab, etc. It's not really scalable way, because imagine if you operate on a scale of 1,000,000 hectares, such as Brazil, you cannot scout and sample accurately and fast this kind of acreage or area, right? So this is what we are trying to do. So we develop digital agronomy solutions for various crops. We started, as I mentioned, in Brazil. Today we focus on two major crops in Brazil, which is sugarcane and soybean. What we learned that it takes quite some time to develop digital products in agriculture because of seasonality, because also of the nature of agriculture. Agriculture is probably the most biologically complex environment you can have, and imagine you need to describe this environment using digital technologies, and this environment has a lot of variables such as weather conditions, soil, crop varieties, different crops, growing practices, etc., you name it. So this definitely led us to focus very much on few crops, because you need to develop very meticulous understanding of agronomy and the specific markets, crop markets. So today in sugarcane, we work directly with large sugarcane producers. It's called sugarcane mills. So we provide a combination of drone-based and satellite-based solutions. Just to give you an example, from planting efficiency analysis to detection of weeds, going up to, I don't know, harvest management, right? So we are trying to follow the cycle and provide a holistic monitoring solution, right, for the grower. We are taking a very different approach in soybean, because sugarcane market in Brazil is quite consolidated. You have around, I don't know, 300-400 sugarcane mills, and this is pretty much it. Versus soybean, you have thousands or hundreds of thousands, all kind of farmers. You have large growers, you have small and medium-sized growers. So for us, we could not address growers directly. So the go-to-market was actually to partner with established agricultural business, right? B2B business, with substantial customer base and footprint in Brazil and soybean, and so that we can potentially integrate digital products, digital agriculture products, together with conventional products of the industry, such as fertilizers, crop protection, machinery, etc. So that's what we did. So we partnered with one of the leading crop protection companies and decided to focus on a very specific pest in Brazil, which is known as a $1 billion problem.
Okay.
So as we see, if we talk about agriculture in general, and if you try to address even one crop, soybean in Brazil and soybean in US, these are two completely different markets that are structured differently, because in US you have retailers with a very established footprint. In Brazil, it's not the case. And then let's say if we go from sugarcane in Brazil, and Brazil has been #1 largest producer of sugarcane, to India, which is second largest, the scale and the problems and challenges they're facing are completely different, right? So even for the same crop. So this is the reality of agriculture, because it's very difficult to come up with a very universal solution that will, from the day one, will be able to address different crops and different markets. We are definitely leveraging, because today beyond Brazil, we have presence in India, where we work with, again, a business partner in sugarcane, and we definitely leverage what we learned in Brazil in terms of crop and market. But when it comes to commercialization, it's a completely different story.
Okay, on the Brazil specifically for soybean, you mentioned that you partnership with one of the largest crop protection company. Can you say with what company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can say we are partnering with Syngenta.
Okay. And
I mean, we've been developing this partnership over the last 3 years.
Okay. And but this is only for the soybean. So, and on the sugarcane, do you have direct access to the growers because they are larger growers? So you do that?
We have a team. We have a commercial team in Brazil that is basically addressing sugarcane market directly. Yeah, we don't rely today on business partners. We're exploring right now in parallel with B2C, B2B approach in sugarcane as well. but it's not that well established, such like in soybean or other crops. And just to make it clear, in soybean, we are partnering with crop protection partner for specific issue, not for the soybean crop itself, right? We still can address some of the issues in soybean directly or with other partners as well, right?
How is the environment in Brazil? Is it the distribution channel quite strong enough in order to block you to not go directly through the growers, or do you even think part of the go-to-market is to see what other partnerships you can have with big distributors?
I would say, you know, when this agtech ecosystem appeared 5-6 years ago, the main promise was that we will disrupt the traditional distribution channels in agriculture. And what we learned today that it's still early days. I mean, you have to rely today on traditional distribution channels and combine, right, digital services around the products, around the, you know, conventional products of the industry. So we are not disrupting, we are actually, you know, partnering with traditional distribution channels. And I don't believe today that at least in the digital agriculture services domain, that you can build a very, you know, sustainable and scalable business model going direct to farmers, at least based on the experience that we had during the last 5-6 years.
How are the farmers perceiving the services you are providing, and also in terms of you know, how expensive it's for them to
I think the biggest challenge when it comes to farmers, how do they perceive it? It requires a lot of training and education, because they are not necessarily have experience with digital solutions. And we as a small company, it's definitely a challenge for us because we cannot educate the market. We just don't have resources. When it comes to, and also, you know, agriculture is still, you know, the most traditional industry, despite that it's changing rapidly. So you have to develop a trustful relationship with your customers, and it takes time. They don't trust the solution if it's not applied on their fields, and they experience it, let's say, at least during the growing season, right? So it's very difficult to come up with a solution and ask farmer to pay from the day one, because they need to see benefits. Even if you know, like market it well, it's not kind of like, it's not value-based pricing from day one, right? You start with something like something more simple in terms of pricing, and then over years you can shift to a value-based pricing once you deliver much more tangible benefits, and the farmer can, you know, calculate the return on investment, etc. This is how today industry operates.
Okay, the farmers you are targeting today are more running on conventional intensive agriculture, or are also more turned around organics or around biologicals?
I mean, we have different kind of profiles, but still, let's say today it's mostly intensive agriculture growers. We have few growers that are much more advanced using sustainable growing practices. I mean, it's changing, but this is still like not a reality today.
Okay. So your key market is Brazil. You've mentioned it also that you start now in India.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned also the differences between, you know, Brazil and India, not in terms of you know, climates differences and so on. What
It's
about
not just
the
climate,
farm
because
size?
you know, sorry.
What about the farm size? Because in India,
Yeah, it's very different. In Brazil is known for industrial agriculture, while India is about smallholder farming.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to play in two markets, because what you see in Brazil cannot be applied in India. That was the reason why actually even in India, where it's characterized by smallholder farmers, we actually decided to focus on sugarcane, because in sugarcane, you have still aggregators called sugarcane mills. You have thousands of small growers, but they still aggregated on the level of sugarcane mill. So there is a corporate entity, right, that sources sugarcane from thousands of small farmers, and we are dealing directly with this entity, right, with sugarcane mill. So this is it makes it a bit easier, you know, to address countries like such as India.
Okay. How about Ukraine? Because also you mentioned it. I don't know if you are already present in Ukraine or it is in your plans.
We are not present today in Ukraine, mostly because of resources required to develop and to develop solution for specific crop in specific market. What we learned that you have to focus, right? Even if we are, you know, 5-year-old organization, we still have limited resources, and because the development cycle of digital solution in agriculture is quite long, you have to focus. So we, in the past, we actually had much more activities in multiple crops and multiple geographies because we potentially underestimated the complexity of the product development and market development. Today, we decided to focus much more on few crops, establish Gamaya as a market leader from a digital imaging domain, right, in these respective markets and crops, and then expand. Okay. So today we are still kind of like expanding our footprint in the strategic crops and markets that we identify for ourselves.
What about thinking on expansion in US? So now you are well established in Brazil, you are tackling now India. What other future plans? Would you consider also US or other
I mean, US is definitely, interesting market, leader in digital imaging technologies for sure. Let's say we definitely would be considering US, but only together with partner. So okay. Let's say if we work with multinational company and we start, let's say in Brazil, they have still plans obviously in other geographies and markets such as US. You have US on radar screen. The only complexity was with US. In order to address US, you have to be there. So you have to invest a lot in your, local team because you cannot address US remotely.
Yeah, because you just mentioned it also the team and ambition for expansion. How big is Gamaya today? How many employees do you have? What type of background do they have? You mentioned it also. It's very important to have people experienced in commercial, not only in R&D.
Yeah, we have around 30 people today, split mostly between commercial team in Brazil, software team, data science team, product team, operations team, right? We have we brought agricultural expertise internally on the management level, but also on the board level. So it was important to mention. We are still, very much software-driven organization, but right now we have, very well-established commercial team in place. Yeah.
Okay.
And what is important for us when we started to build our commercial team in Brazil, digital imaging or digital agriculture is new for everyone, right? For startups such as Gamaya or for big corporations. And what was important initially, we were hiring people from traditional agricultural companies with no understanding of how digital product work, right? And then it's very difficult. It's not because it's not like easy sell. So if people are coming with conventional experience from agriculture, sometimes they don't understand really how to market and sell products, digital products. So we had to actually change it and bring much more, bring people with the relevant experience, even if, let's say, they are not coming from agriculture. The importance is to have experience in digital products. Agriculture you can learn, because I'm not coming from agriculture. Like during the last 6 years, I learned agriculture. But if you don't know digital products, it's difficult to learn how digital product work. But luckily today we have commercial team that with experience in agriculture and digital products. So we are good to go.
Okay. On your mid-long-term strategy and ambition to grow, where would you see within the next 5 years? Which other countries you would like to tackle? So we mentioned it, US will be good. It will be difficult, but will be good. I was wondering, what about Russia? Because also in Russia, we do have very big farms, and also we have very small farms, you know, the cluster. You coming from Russia, you do have a very good background already there. Why is that yet on your list?
I mean, we actually I spent myself quite some time in Russia already, being part of Gamaya. So I traveled there, met some customers. I do think that we didn't see that you know, the demand for innovation back then, at least it was 5 years ago. Russia together with Ukraine is definitely on our radar screen. If you address Ukraine, you inevitably add Russia or vice versa, right? Because it's very much, you know, similar in terms of crops and in terms of, you know, like how market is structured. Ukraine and Russia, you know, like in this sense, they are consolidated by large players, agro holdings, right? In the same way, like sugarcane market in Brazil, which is consolidated by extremely large players as well. So we know it's mostly, you know, corporate farming. You have obviously also all kind of, you know, farmers, small and mid-sized, but I think in terms of market, they don't represent a big market share. Regarding our midterm strategy, we are not thinking just about, you know, geographical expansion. We are thinking about expansion vertically in the crop, right? Let's take sugarcane. We today provide solutions to improve crop production, right? From, I don't know, planting efficiency to harvest management. Nowadays, also, you know, there is a big topic right now to enable growers to participate in carbon credit market, right? To enable growers, you need to monitor the sustainable practices, right, they're using, such as no-till, such as cover crops, etc. And we believe that remote sensing is definitely one of the technologies that could play a role to help actually to monitor the use of sustainable practices on a large scale. So sooner or later, we will start adding these kind of tools. It's called monitoring, reporting, verification to enable our customers to participate in carbon credit markets. So this is definitely one of the ideas that we are currently exploring beyond just, you know, expanding to different geographies and markets. When it comes to soybean, I mentioned to you that we today focus just on one product solution to detect specific pests. So we intend to build a much more complete portfolio of products for soybean growers, right? This is definitely what we plan to do.
And then thinking on the carbon footprint, and we know how important this starts to be tackled also in EU 27. Is it another, you know, thinking on the development of this new service? Is it a specific country where you would like to test already this service? Either you will test it already where you are very well settled in Brazil, or do you see any, you know, an advantage in going into another countries where really?
I would say, I mean, as you see, still US is leading the game when it comes to climate, carbon and carbon sequestration topic, right? And carbon credit markets. It's, I mean, we want definitely to leverage our existing footprint, because just last year, if we talk about sugarcane, the Brazilian government introduced a new program called Renova Bio, which is equivalent of, you know, carbon credit market for sugarcane producers in Brazil. This is definitely one, you know, very tangible opportunity for us, having sugarcane as the main market for Gamaya. But also we don't exclude possibility to go together with someone, right, and address the market in US.
If we can live in a perfect world, or if we can attend the perfectionism, let's say, in agriculture, how would you see it?
I mean, I'm biased here because we are coming from digital agriculture. I know that agriculture will be different and it's changing rapidly. But what also I know it's a long-term play, even with digital technologies. Digital technologies will definitely allow us to grow crops in a much more efficient and sustainable way, in a much more automated way. You can imagine, obviously, auto-steer tractors that could implement treatment actions without, manual interaction. This is like it's not a problem. The problem today is the lack of sensing, right? Lack of the diagnostic. The machinery and the automation is already there, but we need to learn how to sense the crop condition and the health condition of the crop, right, on a large scale. This is what we are doing. So for me, let's say agriculture is gonna be technified, and it's already technified to a large extent. We will, and then the big companies such as established, agricultural corporations, they will need to be part of this game. It's not just startups who would be changing agriculture significantly, but it's going to be joint collaboration between startup and corporations to drive it forward.
Okay, this is very interesting. Thank you. If you will have a message, really, in 30 seconds, 1 minute, keep in mind what you just said, how you see also the future of agriculture. What you just mentioned is that you will start a new series of the funding. What will be the message you will give to an investor? Why the investor needs to put money in Gamaya, and not only the money, the time, and the expertise?
Yeah, I mean, we are leading the game in digital agriculture in one of the largest food producer in the world, right? So today Brazil feeds Asia, right? We have a very strong footprint in 2 key crops in Brazil. We are focusing on improving efficiency and sustainability of global crop production. So we will be part of the digital revolution in agriculture, and we are part of the digital revolution in agriculture. We are doing it with the help of new technologies such as machine learning and AI. We don't replace the knowledge. We try to capture it and scale it using remote sensing technologies. And since we are coming from a research environment, we spend quite some time actually developing very scalable IT infrastructure, because you can come up with great products, but if you don't have scalable IT infrastructure to support these products, then you are not competitive. We are facing very intense competition today. Most of the competitors, they are trying to address different kind of crops, different kind of markets. We believe that what differentiates Gamaya from the competition is, first of all, our B2B approach, because we don't see today digital as something separate. We see it as a part of the integrated offer. Second, we've been focusing on specific crops from the day one. So we developed expertise, deep expertise in these relevant crops, and then we managed to establish a quite successful team, right, to lead these activities.
Okay, so if I will just summarize in 3 words also your strengths, then we will say B2B and the go-to-market. Second one, the expertise in agriculture among
people. I would say crop. I mean, the footprint in the not in agriculture, in 2 respective crops that we mentioned, right, sugarcane and soybean. And last, I would say the technology background, right, of our team, because we are coming from EPFL. So we have a very strong technical expertise, because we are dealing still, with remote sensing, which is very technical driven space.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm looking for when you will open your fundraising. Look, Igor, thank you so much for your time. For sure that we'll have other opportunities for such type of video interviews. And really, it was a pleasure to know more about you, to know more about Gamaya. And wish you good luck with all your ambitions. Good luck for entire team you're leading, and we stay in touch.
Thank you for this amazing opportunity. It was a pleasure.